Hello and welcome back to one more episode of Quantum Tutorials. This is part 3 of Decision Model Notations playlist. In this episode, let us look at how to use hit policy as priority while defining a decision element inside a decision model notation. We look at the same example that we have looked at in the previous two episodes, that is, it takes two input parameters age and credit rating and gives a decision as approved or rejected to describe either to reject or approve the loan application based on the values provided for age and credit rating input parameters. If there are rules that have been defined inside the decision model which result in different output values, either approved or rejected, for the same values that are provided for age and credit rating, in such scenarios, you can use this hit policy as priority and define the priority of execution of those business rules that you define as part of your decision model. So without further ado, let us look at how to create a decision model that uses decision table for defining the logic or the rules and which uses hit policy as priority. Open the Kogito business model preview tool and click on create new decision model. Give the name for the DMN that you are creating, and let's create this DMN by using two input parameters, same as what we have done in the first episode of this playlist. Let's define the data types for both the input parameters. I am defining the data type for age input parameter as number and the data type for credit rating input parameter as string. Now let's define the decision element. Let's link both the input parameters to the decision element. Let's give the name for the decision element. Click on edit and define the rules inside the decision element. Click on select expression and you will be shown a list of options. Select decision table for defining the logic for this decision element. In the previous two episodes, we have been looking at the decision table for defining the logic of the decision element. In the first element, we have used simple data types for the input parameters. In the second episode, we have looked at how to use a custom data type for the input parameter. In this episode, while defining the decision table, there is an option called hit policy. By clicking on this option, you will be shown a list of values that you can use for defining the hit policy. Unique as a value for the hit policy means the rows inside your decision table are all unique. That means the combination of the values that you provide for the input parameters are unique and they result in a final decision. In this episode, let us look at hit policy as priority. If you have any rows inside your decision table that have same values for the input parameters but resulting in a different value for the output clause, in such scenario you can define the priority in between such rules that you have inside your decision table. Let us look at an example now. Let us define the rules inside our decision table. I am defining the rules to be same as what we have defined in the previous 2 episodes. In this decision table that we are defining as part of this episode, we'll have the 5th row defined to be same as 2nd row, that is the values of age and credit rating will be same in the 2nd row and 5th row, but the value of the final decision would be different. As you can see here, the values for age and credit rating in the 2nd row and 5th row are same, but the value of the final decision is different. In such a scenario, you can define the priority in between the rules that you have inside your decision table. For defining the priority, right click on the output clause in our scenario, the final decision, and insert right. Define the name for the output 1 as priority and define the data type as number. So now you can define the priority in between the rules that you have inside your decision table. Give some numbers. So I am giving the numbers 1 to 5 for each rule that I have inside the decision table, and click on the priority. Access the properties of this priority element. Here you will have two properties, default output and output values. For the values that are sent to the input parameters age and credit rating, if none of the decision rules are evaluated, in such scenario you can define which rules you want to use as a priority element and return that output clause in such scenario. Here I am defining 1 as the default output value, which means whenever we get a value for age and credit rating that does not evaluate or meet any of the rules that you have defined inside your decision table, in such scenario the default output would be 1, the priority value 1, and the value that is returned as approved. And in the output value property, you can define the priority in between the rules. So I am defining 1 to be highest priority, then 5 to be the second highest priority, and then the remaining ones. So with this order, whenever we get a value for the age and credit rating as greater than or equal to 21 and credit ratings value as low, we have two outputs, rejected and approved, and by looking at the priority, the final decision would be the one which is having the higher priority, which is 5 in this case, and approved would be returned as the final value of this DMN. Let's execute and look at the output that we get. So let's give the value of the age and credit rating as low. If you see here, both rule 2 and rule 5 got executed, and because rule 5 is having the higher priority, so the approved is returned as the final decision. So just to iterate, the meaning of priority as a value for the hit policy means only one row at a time can be executed according to the specified priority, regardless of the list order. You can give row 5 as a different priority and row 2 as a different priority. Although the rules row 2 and row 5 evaluate to the same input parameter values, based on the priority which you have given, that particular row will get executed first. This means you can keep the row order as you want while defining the decision table for visual readability, but specify the priority exceptions based on which the rules should get executed. You can use the hit policy as priority in more complex DMN scenarios that you create. Thank you.